I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Good morning, everybody. Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome to another beautiful day where I'm sitting at 6:49 in the morning and where Daniel's sitting is a different time zone altogether. I welcome Daniel. Daniel's got his own podcast called Hard Knox Talks. And I'm very grateful to have you on the program, Daniel. So welcome, mate.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's actually 2:49 in the afternoon here, and it's a beautiful day. It's not too hot. It's 24 degrees Celsius here, so it's perfect podcasting weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, every weather's perfect podcasting weather.
Yeah, I agree.
Carrying a message, man. Carrying a message. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your story, Daniel, please, mate?
Well, I mean, I've been podcasting now for about 2.5 years. I started doing this. I've been in recovery for 6.5. I started doing this while I was living on student loan. It was the middle of COVID, and I started from my laptop. And I don't know where the idea came from, but one day, you know, with the journey that I'd been on, and we'll get into it, but it said I should start a podcast. And I kind of looked around the room, like, because it was so out of left field. Like I'm a welder by trade, you know, very passionate about healing and recovery and wellness, but know nothing about podcasting at all. Like I had to learn how to open a Word document to go to school.
Yeah.
So so I did that, and long story short, it sort of took off for me, and now I get to do this full time. I dropped out of school, and this is how I serve community and how I bring stability to my family. And you know, I don't know if I would consider myself a program guy anymore. I do still go to meetings, but that's not everything that I do for my wellness. I went into the rooms like as soon as I was out of treatment, because I went to detox, I went to treatment, and as soon as I was out of treatment, off to the rooms I went. And you know, I did that for a long time, and they talk about the promises in the program. And I truthfully am amazed. I can say that when I entered recovery, I did not see any of this coming at all. And that goes back, you know, all the way to when I was 13 years old. And I had my first, I don't know if you got Budweiser down in Australia, but that's where you are, right? You're in Australia,
man.
aren't you?
Yeah, we're in Australia. Yep.
Yeah. So I got my hands, and I couldn't wait. Like I wanted to get drunk when I was probably 11 years old, and I would harass the hell out of my dad. Like, what does beer taste like? What does vodka taste like? And he'd be like, why do you want to know all this shit? You know, and because he'd put the plug in the jug a long time ago. Like I didn't grow up around active alcoholism. My dad was in recovery when I was born. So I saw a few rooms and stuff when I was young, but when I was 13, I had that switch flipped. I got my hands on the 6-pack, and I got blackout drunk.
Yeah.
And since that moment, it like from that moment, it turned into, it was all about Friday night. I would work all week to make sure that I could get the booze, that I could get someone to get it for me, that I could, like, all the things just to make sure that I could experience that as much as possible. And then I moved from a small town to a big city where different substances became abundantly available. And I smoked weed all through high school. And the interesting thing about my marijuana use is that I didn't like it. You know, I the very first time I tried it, I had fun, but and I don't know if you can relate, but I very quickly, it turned into just anxiety inducing. Like I would smoke weed and it didn't seem to matter. Like I could have one little puff and I would try to have one puff and I would be anxious. So I would have a smaller one. I'm like, well, anxious. Well, maybe I need to smoke a whole bunch, and then I'd be really anxious. And I kept doing it. I just kept doing it for years, you know, every time saying this time's going to be different. So that just really goes to speak to the insanity, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. So and I was 22. I was in school to become a journeyman welder. I'd always been mechanically inclined. I had a race car. By the time I was 18. You know, my grandfather bought me a Mustang, an 84 Mustang, when I was 16 or 17. And as soon as I got a taste of that speed, it was like, you know, it was all weed and wrenches.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So and it was fast. I had a lot of fun with that car. But when I was 22, I got my first taste of other substances. And you know, I held it together for a while. I ended up getting my journeyman certificate. I went to work in, you know, northern Saskatchewan and northern Alberta and the mine sites and stuff like that. And I bought a house and I had a nice car and I still had my race car. And it was the strangest thing. I could go up north to work and I would work for like 20 days straight, you know, and when I was up there, I wouldn't use. And it wasn't because I didn't, like, it wasn't because I thought I couldn't, because, you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of Fort McMurray in Alberta, Canada, but like it's an oil town. And there's tradesmen and there's drugs and there's sex work and there's all the things. I could have had everything that I ever wanted in abundance. But I was away from my social circle where I felt that it was a necessity, and I just didn't. And it wasn't even a second thought. It just, in fact, I didn't even notice that I wasn't getting high. That's how fleeting it was. So, and that's something that still to this day I'm trying to understand. But in 2008, there was a big layoff, and by this time I had started to notice the pattern, how I would just not use up north, and then down in Saskatoon where I live, where I still live, I would just, it would be no holds barred. And I had met the woman who is now the mother of my children and the co-host of the show, and her name's Donna, and we'll talk more about her. And our most endearing quality in each other was that we could use together, right? We didn't get on each other's cases, like, oh, you're using too much or whatever, you know. And we really loved that. And we have grown to find other qualities that we love in each other now. But at the time, we both just wanted to have fun, right? And that's how we had fun. So when I was laid off, I knew I was in trouble. Like, by that time I'd recognized it, and I was going home to Donna, who liked to drink and smoke and do whatever as much as I did. And over the next couple of years, over the next 8 years, we sort of just jumped off a cliff together. You know, I started a welding company, and I started to have some success despite the using. It was manageable at one point, I suppose, but slowly things just started to descend. You know, we were smoking meth. And then one day we realized that we could get opioids. We could get Dilaudid. So we started playing around with that, you know, and completely oblivious, despite what we were told, and despite what you see on television, how people who use opiates typically end up in the dope sickness and all of these things. I didn't even know dope sickness was a word until I experienced it the first time. And we were hooked. And it just, the company sort of burned to the ground. The phone stopped ringing, you know, like when you can, I think it's important to mention that everybody wants to feel okay. Everybody wants to feel good, to feel fulfilled. And that, my business gave me that. It gave me something to move forward with, something to build, something to wake up in the morning and do and be grateful for. But as the opioids moved in, I mean, the Dilaudid turned to oxy, and when the person that had the oxy couldn't keep up with our needs, we went to the street, and we went to using what we know now as fentanyl. We didn't know at the time. It looked like a pressed OxyContin tablet, you know? And I'm sure those are all over the world now. Those, they call them green beans or shady 80s or whatever. And we turned to those, and it got really dark. Like, it got really, like I said, the phone stopped ringing because I found something that made me feel what I needed to feel. it gave me that false sense of fulfillment, that false sense that everything was okay and warm and fluffy, and I could just lay on the couch all day and watch daytime talk shows and be okay. And meanwhile, my business burned to the ground. And then one day, Donna curls up beside me, and with all of the tender emotion that she could muster, she told me that she was pregnant. Now, that's a shocking revelation to people who are in good health. That is a very life-changing thing to happen, you know, for people who have never experienced these hardships. So for a couple that's addicted to fentanyl, that's bad news. You know, what we perceived as bad news at the time, let me be careful with my words.
Yeah.
So we tried to wean off for a very short time on our own, failing time and time again over a short period of time. And we're like, we can't do this alone. But by the grace of something bigger than me, we ended up in the methadone clinic. And we found stability through the maintenance program. Wasn't perfect, you know, like it would be nice to have gone through all of that sober and healthy, but the methadone offered us the stability we needed to take care of ourselves as best we could. And it worked. You know, I got a job. I was working, running a welding truck. Donna stayed home, took care of herself, tried to manage the house, do things like that. And our son was born. Oh, I'm gonna forget his birthday now. In
Edit.
2013. I don't want to give away too much of his personal information, so we'll say 2013.
Yeah.
And life was good. You know, there were some complications at his birth, but it was all in all, he was born healthy. He didn't need maintenance.
Yeah, well, cool.
You know, so however you want to chalk that up, you know, and he came home and life continued on, right? Donna stayed home and took care of him and raised him, and I continued to work. And then one day we decided that we could do cocaine one time. Oh, we've been doing so good. Let's celebrate. And it didn't take very long until we were, you know, weekends turned into weekends and Wednesdays, and then Thursdays and Fridays and Sundays and Mondays. And now we're using meth again.
Yeah.
You know, and we were taking drug tests because we were on the maintenance program, and I started failing them, and they rapidly weaned me off, which is interesting. And from what I understand, it has changed since then, because this was many years ago now, that they would kick you off a maintenance program for displaying symptoms of your disorder.
Yeah.
Seems, I don't know, man, doesn't seem right. But we started using meth, and I started not showing up for work and making the craziest excuses to not show up for work. I think I milked a flat tire for a week one time. And eventually, I mean, they were forced to let me go for lack of a better alternative at the time. And maybe even still to this day, I'm not entirely sure of what, you know, drug policy is around the workplace here in Saskatchewan. But there were no resources made available that were, well, for one, that I would have been like, yes, let's go and do this, right? Because I was still at a place in my life where I was like, I can handle it, you know, despite all of the terrible things that had happened. So I turned to dumpster diving. I was sick of working for the man. I had these delusions that I was going to start a recycling company. But really all I ever did was make enough money to get the drugs I needed to stay up all night, to make enough money to get the drugs I needed to stay up all night. And it just went on and on and on. And the house filled up with garbage. And, you know, it went into foreclosure. They took they shut the heat off, the gas. I learned that if you don't pay your gas bill for a year, they come and take the power, or they come and take the gas meter off your house and just cap it. Like there's red flags there, y'all. Like you poke your head in and be like, hey, are you guys okay?
Yeah.
No, they sent a couple of trades guys over and they took the power or the gas meter off.
Yeah.
And at some point, some really bad people started showing up, and we had skirted this throughout our whole addiction, but towards the end, some really unwell people started showing up, and the house was filled with garbage. There was people coming and going all hours of the day and night. All the bad things that come along with a life. And in December of 2016, the ministry came to my home. 2 social workers and 2 police officers, and they took my son. Yeah, 3 years old. And I'll never forget that day, because I remember the last thing I handed him as he was walking out the door was his stuffy, his puppy. He's had puppy since he was born, and everywhere that puppy went, or everywhere that Grady went, puppy was sure to go.
Yeah.
But to mark that day, to mark that experience, I had puppy tattooed on my arm.
Yeah, right.
Right there, watching over my son when I couldn't. Now, we know differently now that perhaps, because I mean, there's the program guy in me is in the school of thought, like, that's what I needed. I needed that slap in the face. I needed that to be smacked down like that. And maybe I did, but there was definitely other ways that could have been handled. There was a lot of stigma associated with that experience coming from the professionals who were there that day. So after that, the house was haunted. Everywhere that you would look was a memory. There's a toy.
Yeah.
There's a box of diapers. There's whatever. You open the cutlery drawer and there's little spoons. And Donna left. And she left with someone who was very dangerous. And she went to the street. You know, she was under the impression that this person was going to help her move forward in life and become a mother to our son again. And that was very much not what happened. So now Donna's on the street and I'm left alone in this house with no heat in the middle of winter. It's quiet, you know, like it was loud for a while. Those bad people kept coming around for a while, and some more bad things happened. But at the end of it, it just got real quiet. There was nothing left. Even the people I considered friends weren't coming around anymore because I had nothing left to offer. All of my stuff was stolen. I didn't have any money. I didn't even have a cell phone. And one day my mom comes to the door. Now, my mom has been in the addictions field for 40 years here in Saskatchewan. Imagine what that might have been like, having worked in addictions as a counselor, and then beyond that, a substance abuse professional for 40 years. She's got a stack of names that didn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
So one day she comes to the door and she's like, Dan, let's go for lunch. And I was like, all right. And at this point, like I was deep into it. Like I wasn't showering for weeks, maybe even months on end. I wouldn't take my boots off until I couldn't handle the slimy feeling anymore. I was diving into dumpsters every day. I can't imagine how I must have smelled. So we get in her car and we go for lunch and she starts scheming with me. She starts brainstorming with me. She's like, Dan, you need to go to work. You need to go back up north. You didn't use up north. Remember? Like, yeah, I know, I remember. And she's like, you need to make some money. You need to get some stability in your life. You need to get a safe place for your son. You need to get your son back, man. And I stopped her and I kind of looked at her and I'm like, don't I need to get sober first? And the light sort of went on in her eyes and it was almost like robotic. It was like, this is the time, must do the thing. She reached in her purse and she pulled out a form and it was already filled out. Like everything was filled out. She put it down on the table. She said, sign right there. And I did. And 10 days later, I walked into detox. I walked through the detox doors. That was February 12th, 2017. And I haven't used a mind-altering substance until recently, actually, I did. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. And it was very therapeutic, actually. So, but yeah, that was the day that I walked away from the life. I did 10 days in detox. I did 28 days in a treatment center here in Saskatchewan called Pine Lodge. They call it Pain Lodge because they kick your ass.
Yeah.
And it was what I needed at the time, and it worked. I walked in those because my mom is who she is, right? I think like I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to teach them something. Like I'm going to teach you guys about recovery. They very quickly informed me that things were going to go a different way. And they did. And when I walked out of those treatment center doors, I was scared. Like I didn't feel at that point like I'd been given a new lease on life. I'd just gotten a taste of what safety felt like. I get up at this time, make your bed, eat your breakfast, go to your programming, do the things, read this book. So when I walked out of those doors, I went running to the rooms, man. Like I went running. I had nowhere else to go. And my mom's like, I'll give you a ride to this first one. After that, you're on your own. You get yourself to meetings. And I did. I'm like, well, why won't you give me a ride? He's like, you don't need it. You don't need it. I'll buy you a bike. So we went to the pawn shop and she bought me a bike. And I pedaled the shit out of that bike, man, all over town.
Yeah.
And it was just like, Mom, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? My first thought's wrong. I don't know how to live in this world. And I came to a place where I was like, just help me. Like, just help. So I worked with the ministry. I went to meetings. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. I did all that. It worked. I found some relief. But it wasn't even about the drugs anymore. Like putting down the dope was easy. Strange enough as it is to say. And I know if somebody's out there using right now, I know how fucked up that sounds. I get it. But after that, there's a saying, and I think Steve-O says it. It says, it's something like, I didn't realize the problems I had until I stopped drinking. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. I never knew I had a drinking problem until I stopped drinking.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Oh, my daughter's in the background.
Good.
So I was doing everything that I needed to do. But the resentment was burning me up inside. Because Donna left. And she left in a very, very terrible way. And it's not a part of the story that I need to go into a bunch of detail about, but just know that even until recently, sometimes that resentment still, it crops up, but in the beginning, I was on fire, man. I would show up to a meeting and I would spout out the worst things, like talking about murder, talking about just holy cow. I look back now and I don't know how I didn't get kicked out of those rooms, but no one even ever once said, don't come back. And in fact, nobody even, well, one time one guy said, calm down. But for the most part, they just listened. They just sat in silence. Some of them were a little wide-eyed. They just let me go. And I think that's what I needed at that point in my life. Because I didn't have anywhere else to put that. And I didn't know how to associate my emotions with those experiences. So they were just flying everywhere. So I did that. I worked with the ministry. I started getting supervised access to my son. So, and it was just like, what do you need? Like, it wasn't a matter of me, like, I wasn't even really advocating for myself. I was just like, what do you need? I will do it. And I did it. I got into a sober living house. I was taking weekly drug tests. I was doing mandatory case planning and meetings and going to the gym and doing all of the things, checking all the boxes. So, and it worked. So I started getting supervised access, and that was fun. And then, you know, it was like once every 2 weeks, then it was once a week, then it was, 3 hours instead of 2 hours, then 6 hours, then overnights. And on July 31st of that same year, I was awarded intern custody of my 3-year-old boy. Puppy came back. He's seen the worst, and he's been through, and he's seen the best. He's still, to this day, Puppy's just in the other room.
Yeah.
And we lived in a sober living house for the next 10 months together. 24-hour supervision, weekly drug tests continued, mandatory meetings continued. Everybody knew my son. Like the whole recovery community knew my son. So, and we did campouts, and we went swimming, and we, when I got him back, I'm like, Mom, can I have a car? She's like, nope. But your auntie has a cart. So now I've got a 3-year-old. They say in the first year of recovery, get a plant.
Yeah.
See if you can keep the plant alive.
See if it doesn't.
So yeah. So I'm like 6 months in, and now I have a 3-year-old who's not been like raised in the most savory conditions.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a healthy environment. And I'll pull some punches there when I go into detail about it, but that was how it was. And it wasn't easy, man. In fact, parenting to this day is the hardest thing I've ever done. Yeah. And especially when I still don't know how to assign my actions to my behaviors, to my feelings, to, like he's 3, like he's not going to act right, and it just, I didn't handle it always properly. I would yell, I would slam the odd door, I would, but we got through, him and I, both learning along the way, growing up together, really.
Yeah.
I'm sure that he has taught me more about life than I have taught him. And that's beautiful. My greatest teacher. We graduated the Coming Home. It was called the Coming Home program. We graduated, and I got an apartment. And he went to preschool. I walked him through the preschool doors. I gave him the hug and said, have a good day, for the first time. And I got a job, and I got a car. So I was, I'm driving now, and it's a Lexus, like not a nice one, but it was a Lexus. I like to flex it. Goddamn Lexus. And life went on, and I built this identity for myself. I was the single dad. I was the dad that all of the people were like, oh, look at that young man. I was 36, but people were still saying that.
Yeah.
Look at that young man, got sober, and he's a single dad now. And like, I'm all like, I guess I am that, Yeah. So one day after a camping trip, Donna's father comes over, and like, it was with a tone of urgency. It was very like, something's going on here, but I was not prepared for what he was going to tell me. And he said, Donna's back. And you'd think that I may feel some relief in that moment. And I'm speaking to how I was in that moment, not in the moment I'm in now. But I was angry. It's very angry. I had worked so hard to build this life, to build this identity. And now that's being threatened. Even if she is in recovery. And of course, that was like, I don't know that I was 2 years sober yet. And I was still learning how to handle my emotions. And in fact, I don't think I'll ever be done learning how to handle my emotions. But at the time, yeah. So we did our best to be amicable. There was some access. Grady got to see his mom and all this stuff. And then we just couldn't see eye to eye on a parenting schedule. And we ended up in court. And it was ugly. In fact, I would argue that that was one of the hardest times in my life. And at that point, it was the hardest time of my life. I never had thoughts, really, many, of wishing that I wasn't here anymore.
Yeah.
The lawyers were very relentless and very, I don't know. But at the end of the day, it dragged on for like 2 years. And at the end of it all, we both got what we wanted anyways. So, holy shit. So now we have 50-50 custody. And it was very awkward and uncomfortable at first, having to do the drop-offs. I was like trying to find people that I could trust. Like, could you take my son to her house so that we don't have to like see each other? And the universe was like, no, Dan, we're not doing that. So that was the beginning of us sort of being like pushed, kicking and screaming back together. And it wasn't easy at first. It was like, okay, I love you, see you later. And I would like take off, and she would do about the same. But eventually it was like, how are you? And then eventually it was like, would you like to stay for supper? And then it stayed like that for quite a while. And then COVID hit, and she was literally, legally, the only person that I could see.
Yeah.
I used to sit back and just like, holy shit, man, really? So, and the bond continued to regrow. And that's when I started the podcast. I was in school. I was taking a safety certificate program, and the idea came along, and it just worked. It just worked. And I went from a laptop in my dining room table. Very quickly, it turned into a small streaming studio, and then a better equipped streaming studio. And now it's at a place where I can't believe that this is in my house. And I'm saying that with all the humility I can muster. I'm not here to brag about success or anything, but this is my story. And in January of 2022, so January of last year, I looked at my analytics, and I looked at I had gotten sponsors, I had gotten grant funding, I was doing it. And I dropped out of school. And since that day, I've been doing this full time. And one day, Donna came when we were having our supper on Friday night. Donna said, and I don't remember her exact words, but the idea that she put forward is like, look at what you're doing, and look at what I'm doing. Like, something that I'm doing it's not moving me forward. And I kind of had to be like, that's not something Donna would typically say. Like, the old Donna would not go there. The way I knew her anyways. So I said, well, why don't we've got this streaming studio like right here, literally, it's like 10 feet away. And why don't you start a podcast? I'll help you. Like, I'll produce for you. I'll do all the things that you don't know how to do. And she hummed and hawed about it. And I'm like, Donna, like, what have you got to lose? Basically was the idea that I put forward. And I think some time went by, and she said, all right, let's do it. So Donna is not a public speaking type. She does not like being in front of a bunch of people. So when we went live the very first time, and she sat in this chair and did an interview on a live stream, I knew in that moment that something had changed. And I had been thinking about it for a while. Like, I've been like looking at her sideways for a number of years already, wondering, like, is the crazy gone? And I'm sure she's thinking the same thing, like looking at me, because like it went like all the way sideways. And right after that show had ended, we decided to reconcile, and we've been back together now over a year.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And that pretty much brings us to today. So
yeah, it's a really people would go like, oh, how, drug addicts separating, violence, split, desertion. It's a love story, man.
It's something.
In my world, it's a love story, and it's a story of success and tenacity, and the thing of never giving up and of being unselfish. Because a lot of your story, you could have just changed your name to my name's Ron.
Mm-hmm.
This is my story.
And that's a fact. Like a lot of our people like us, we all have a story. I mean, everybody has a story of hardship. Like I would challenge you to go and find someone who hasn't at our age, like, I'm 43, go find a 43-year-old that doesn't have tragedy in their life, that doesn't have loss in their life, that doesn't have trauma in their life.
We all have our own crosses to bear.
That's and that's the truth.
I believe that, I have 40-year-old twin daughters.
Oh boy.
I met their mother in rehab.
you dog you.
Yeah. And that relationship didn't work out. And I used to drop my twins off to her mother's place every second weekend. I had custody of my children.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard. I came back from a relapse in 1986. My daughters were 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I had twin 3-year-old daughters, no money, no car, nothing. And I had to go to meetings every day because I was the same. I didn't know anything else, but I also had nowhere else to go.
I went to 2 meetings every single day for a year. They say do 90 and 90. I did like 180 some. I didn't know what else to do. I needed that structure in my life. It was a place that, like I can go here. And every night in Saskatoon, the meeting's in a different place. So scenery is a bit different every day. And some people go to this one and some people go to this one. So yeah, it definitely gave me the structure that I needed.
Yeah. And my kids grew up in the rooms. And I have twins. So one of them's now 17 years clean and runs a detox center.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, you must be so proud.
And the other one's just still has a drink on the weekends and was never
You ever get mad? Do you ever get mad at people that can do that?
I get envious. I think,
yeah,
because this is where I have I've been doing drug and alcohol work for 42 years. Like I got clean 42 years ago and relapsed. Had 3 relapses over a 5-year period. But even as soon as I got clean, I went straight to work at rehab because I'm a career criminal. I've never had a job in my life. I've never worked for anybody else. I was, my dad was a gangster. I grew up in the gangster world. I shot my first man when I was 16 years old. And my dad was proud of me, except for I shot him in the leg, which is a cowardly act.
Whoa.
And I got into trouble for not killing the guy when I was 16.
Wow.
So I've just written a book. It's published now. It's a good book because it's real. And it finishes in 2002 because something happened to me in 2002, which was another story altogether. 16 and a half years clean. I got sentenced to 18 years prison.
Whoa.
Yeah. I went back to the old world. I didn't pick up, but I still went back to the old world. Got involved in organised crime. Got arrested.
Did you do the time?
I did 9 years here. I did 8 years straight. I did a year on remand, then I did 9 years straight. So in Australia, when you get sentenced to a federal prison, you do 50% of your time. So I served 9 years I went in at 18 years clean again. I went back in, served 8 years, stayed clean, opened a rehab in prison as a prisoner with the support of the general manager.
Yeah.
Had a whole unit with 30 guys in, all clean, doing yoga, meditation, breath work, the 12-step programs. I had yoga teachers coming in from outside. Excuse me, I got this cough. It was unbelievable. It was higher power stuff, and I don't even know who my higher power is. So if anyone out there struggling and thinking, they see the word God on the wall, they go to a 12-step program, the word God there, it's the God of my understanding.
Yeah.
Which is love, understanding, and forgiveness. That's what my higher power is,
Yeah. And
But
I think
yeah, man.
it's important to have these conversations outside the rooms too, right? Like a person shouldn't have to go to a church basement to find recovery, you
Yeah.
know. And that's the beauty of social media now these days. So we can carry our message, and we can do some work, and we can build a community online, and it just propagates, man. Just it continues and grows, and I love it.
Yeah. The reason I reached out to yourself and other people is because I believe in recovering out loud.
Mhm.
And I think people get really screwed up with, and I have conflict with people. I'm one of the people that was in NA when it first started in Australia.
Mm.
We never had any literature in 1981.
You're like the Australian Jimmy K.
Yeah, I'm more like the Australian bad boy. I wasn't the poster child. I say that all the time. I'm not the poster child for recovery.
Mm-hmm.
My spiritual advisor, who I don't call my sponsor, says to me, well, you are. You did everything you weren't supposed to do, yet you stayed clean.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you are the poster boy. A lot of people don't take the risks.
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody that went to prison and served 8 years and stayed clean.
That's something. That's
Yeah.
definitely something. I don't think I've heard of that before.
Because prison now is a melting pot for drugs.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went to prison in 1971, which is a few years ago now, there was no drug addicts.
Mm-hmm.
There was no such thing as a drug addict in prison in 1971 when I went to prison.
Mm-hmm.
I got my first drug in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I was given my first drug by the prison system, a drug called Largactil, which is a psych drug. And it gives you a liquid lobotomy, you just dribble and that was my first introduction to drugs. And while I was in there, a guy said to me, what medication are you on, man? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm a 17-year-old kid. And he goes, don't swallow it today. Bring it back and show me. And I brought it back and he's like, yeah, we can shoot that shit up, man.
Mm.
My first injectable drug, 1971. And,
Wow.
and the prison system gave it to me. They diagnosed me as a schizophrenic psychopath. And that's why they put me on this drug.
Yeah.
What's a schizophrenic?
I don't even know how to define it.
Dual personality.
Yeah.
What's a drug addict? Dual personality. Yeah. A psychopath is somebody who only thinks about somebody who thinks about themselves. What's an addict in active addiction? Somebody who just thinks about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It was a misdiagnosis. I've never been on a psych drug ever since. I was only in it for that time window that I was in prison. Yeah. And I came out of prison and my life spiraled really quickly because I'm a heroin addict. That's my drug of choice. Dilaudid, I'd go and hit the doctors up.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a heroin addict. I can't do the ephedrines. I can't do those drugs. My brain's not wired for meth. I'm glad that meth wasn't around meth was around, but not ice.
Mm-hmm.
I took meth for a short period of time and all my friends told me to get back on heroin. True story.
Yeah, no, I get it. I hear you. And I didn't like uppers really.
Yeah.
But the down, I don't know, like it was just too dangerous, and then it went off the rails anyways. So, but I remember like earlier in our talk today, I mentioned, and I should probably talk a little bit about it, and you can do with it what you want. I said I haven't touched any mind-altering substances until recently, and the reason I said that is because I went on a psychedelic journey about a week and a half ago, and I would argue that has been one of the best things that I have done for my recovery so far. The realizations that I had and the lens that I was offered to look through while I was in that ceremony, it changed the way that I see the world, and it changed and continues to change my relationship with my trauma and with my emotions. I find that I'm not using anger as much anymore. And this is only a week and a half in, so this might all change, but what a beautiful experience. And I'm glad that I waited as long as I did, because I was scared, right? I was nervous. Like, I don't want to relapse. I don't want to go back. I don't want this to wake up the addiction or whatever. But it wasn't about that. And I had to get honest with myself and realize, like, I'm not going for the light show. Like, I've seen the light show before.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not taking this to a concert with glow sticks and candy bracelets. This was some very deep soul work, and it was beautiful. So
I think it's a conversation that's really good. I think it's a conversation that we're going to have a lot more of over the next 10 years. When I first got clean, I seen people die because of other people's ignorances in the room. People would come in on psych drugs who had to be on them. They really need to be on them. They were schizophrenia. They did have, psychosis. And they were, they needed their medication. And the old timers back those days, it was someone with 2 years clean. That's a relapse. Then these people would come off their medication. Yeah. And they would suicide. Yeah. Because they had other issues.
And that's a real thing. I'm sure it's probably still happening today. I haven't seen it personally for a while, but I mean, even myself, when I was early on, like in my first year, I wasn't above telling somebody on methadone that they weren't clean.
Yep. I was going to that road then. I was going to say, and also when you were on maintenance programs, you weren't allowed to share at meetings because you were still considered to be drugged. Yeah. And which is sad. And I've made as many amends for that as I can. Yeah. Like, I see the world differently now, that frankly, who cares? Like, I've got better things to do with my life than to walk around deciding who's clean and who isn't. Like, I want people to be well. I want people to find a meaning in their life. And if they need to be on maintenance, if they need to smoke weed or whatever to live their best life, then like, give her. Like, that's what I care about now. Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you moving forward? Like, that's clean to me. Yeah. Is it costing you more than money? Yeah. If it's not costing you more than money, who the hell am I to tell you it's not working? Yeah. Yeah. But who am I to tell anybody how to stay clean? This is my journey. Yeah. This is my recovery. I was a career criminal. And everybody looked down upon me, and this is a long time ago, probably 35 years ago. An older member, he was 5 years clean those days. He was an older member. And he got up and shared at a meeting in Sydney, Australia. And he said, you guys that have been talking about Ronnie behind his back, because I had massage parlors, and I was still shonky, and I drove the car, the gold, the diamonds and all the bullshit. And he goes, you guys up here that are talking about Ronnie behind his back want to be grateful that this program works, because 7 years ago, Ronnie was shooting people. He said, now he owns a massage parlor. He said, isn't that progress?
Yeah.
And that's how he put it. It really is. Yeah. He said, that's how he put it. He said, isn't that progress? He said, he's not coming into the meeting. I was still armed. I carried a gun for the first 10 years of my recovery to meetings. I was crazy, man. But I came from that world. If my dad had been a lawyer, I would have been probably the best lawyer in Australia. But my dad was a gangster. So I grew up on his lap, learning gangster shit. My old man told me, don't go to school. He said, school can't teach you nothing. When I was a little boy, I said, I want to be a lawyer. He said, you want to be a lawyer? You want to fight the cops? Buy a gun. That was his mentality, man. He was rotten through and through. And my cycle has been to break that cycle. And my children went to private schools. As I said, my oldest daughters are very successful in their own rights. They both run companies. They both help people, One of them's a nanny, and she's a nanny for Supreme Court judges and lawyers. Oh, my. Now she's got one of the clearances that no one else can get.
That's good connect.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Just in case you need it later on, you know.
Yeah.
My daughter's looking after your grandkids, man, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have another son who's living that life, and he thinks it's cool to live that life. He's the big bodybuilder now, and he's doing doing the wheeling and dealing, and but he's got to live his life, man. I can't change it. I'm powerless.
Yeah.
See, there's a lot of things about our 12-step programs that I really like. Powerless over people, places, and things takes away the anxiety and the control issues that I have. Coming to believe that the power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. Well, time has also restored me to sanity.
Yeah. That's important to talk about. Like, there have been times where I have found relief, but you gotta keep finding it.
Yeah. See those things there?
Yeah.
That's why I run a program. They're called the 8 demands. This is what I live by. I live by these. I've lived by these for 42 years, even in crime. It's openness, to state where you stand and not to stand your ground, to be open with your thoughts and your feelings. Open? I wasn't open to anything, man. When I got clean, I was closed down. I never told no one nothing. And I wouldn't even tell the dentist what tooth to pull. I wasn't going to tell you nothing, and accept that other people can see me better than I can see myself. If one person tells you screwed up, have a look at it. 2 people tell you, have a good look. 3 people tell you screwed up.
Yeah.
Simple.
I like that one.
Yeah. Reliability, to be reliable with your thoughts and your feelings. Everything's about thoughts and feelings. We have a thinking problem, not a drinking problem. Everyone tries to deal with the drug, like the mushroom. Oh, okay, you take the mushroom. Maybe that's not my issue, you idiot. My issue is my thinking. My brain's my problem. Because I put down drugs, then the shit hit the fan.
And that's funny. The practitioner that I was working with those psychedelics said that, like, these aren't the medicine. You're the medicine.
Yeah.
So and that really sort of opened a door for me. And that's what she said. These will simply open the door for you to get to the medicine, which is you.
I believe it's like surrender was the medicine for me. First of all, I had to admit that I had a problem. Because if you don't admit that's your car, how are you going to change the flat tire? So then I said, okay, it's my car. It's got a flat tire, but I don't know how to change it. Then what you said to me, you said, come over here. Here's the trunk. See that there? That's the jack. You put that jack in that position. You wind the jack. The car goes up. Here's the wheel brace. I'm like, so, and that's what my recovery's been. And some days, I'm trying to undo the nut and I realize I'm twisting it the wrong way, man.
Yeah.
Lefty loosey, righty tighty. And because my brain's so wired differently to a normal person, I believe I have an affliction. I have an allergy to chemicals. When I put a drug in my body, my thinking and my decision making gets a little bit messed up. In the old days, it got really messed up because I had no understanding of compassion or empathy or love and understanding. I had none of that stuff. So now that I'm clean, I can still be crazy, man. I don't need to put a chemical in my body to be crazy.
Yeah, I learned that too. Yeah, I'm definitely still crazy. But it's like, you just learn to point it in the right direction. You sort of learn how to harness it in a way and move forward in a productive way. And like, I get everything that I need out of the stuff that I do in my life today. Like I get that fulfillment that I've been looking for all my life, having conversations like this and meeting people and building relationships and building community. And, that's the fix.
If you get down to the basics of what they say, connection is the opposite to addiction. What are we doing now? We're connecting.
Yeah.
We're connecting with people all around the world. So we're having a massive meeting. If you want to get into the technical, I believe a lot of our programs philosophical bullshit. It's words, and it was written a long time ago. We ran off the 12 steps of AA, which were written a long time ago, and then they talk about the traditions. Anonymity is a spiritual foundation. Media and press. Wait a minute, I'm not getting on the thing and saying Jimmy across the road's a recovering alcoholic. It's my enemy. It's my life. I can do what I like with my life.
Yeah.
But I went through all these things. When I started to do the podcast, I went through this conflict because I'm an old school. Well, am I breaking anonymity? No, I'm not. Am I carrying the message? Yes, I am. Isn't the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening, there's always these steps we try to carry this message to addicts, to practice this wisdom in all our affairs? Motherfucker. Am I carrying the message to a greater audience than I'll ever find anywhere else? Am I giving a message of love, understanding, forgiveness? My word, I am. Is my motivation pure and loving? My word, it is. So get off your high horse, go and help a newcomer, and don't tell me how to run my life. Because I'm really happy with my life, man. I'm really happy. There's nothing I want, honestly, just except for to live longer. Yeah. I have a beautiful 4-year-old daughter, just turned 4 3 days ago, and I have a 7-year-old son, and I'm 68. I'm 69 soon. I have a beautiful wife who I've been with for 11 years. My 40-year-old children have never seen me drunk or stoned. They've seen me arrested in prison, which is something I'm not proud of. If you ask me if I have regrets, yeah, I have one. I got caught.
Got caught. Yeah.
And that's being honest.
Yeah. It's not the crimes, it's getting caught for the crimes.
Yeah. And after I got caught, was I remorseful? Yeah. What was the greatest remorse for? I watched a 6-year-old girl turn into a 16-year-old girl and never seen it happen. Because she went back to live in America. My daughter's mother was American. And she lives in Australia now. She's cool. She's cool. She's here. She's real estate agent, just won top real estate of the year. And, she's 29 years of age now. So the gifts are unbelievable. And it's important to talk about the gifts because people think, oh, we get off drugs, our life's going to be shit. Who am I going to be? I'm going to be nobody. No, I was nobody when I was using drugs.
Yeah.
Today I'm somebody. Today, my art, I don't care if you don't like my book. I love my book. I don't care if you don't like my car. I love my car. I don't care if you don't like my wife. I love my wife. So it's not about what you think anymore. It's about what I know. I know just for the day I found freedom from active addiction by carrying a message of recovery to the addict who still suffers. I believe in that 1,000,000%. And, that goes right back to the very beginning of not even Jimmy K, right back to Bob, Dr. Bob and all that, back to the AA fellowship. How it all started was people helping each other.
Yeah.
And I believe in that therapeutic value. I couldn't listen to a psychiatrist and get clean. A priest couldn't have given me a punch on the head and made me get clean, Yeah. I got clean because people like yourself and me sat down and said, man, I think about fucking killing people. And I go, yeah, so do I.
Oh my God, I do that too.
Yeah. I get to the cash register and the guy hasn't got his credit card out. And I'm like, stupid idiot. You knew you were going to have to pay. Get your credit card out first, dickhead. My wife's like, settle down. I'm going, mate, he knew he was going to get the fucking register, pay your bill, because I have this crazy brain. But you have the crazy brain. So you nod your head and you go, yeah, right. You're telling your story. And I've got empathy and compassion because I had 3-year-old twin daughters. I was a single dad going to meetings. It was hard work. But wow, man, look what they've turned out like. All because I chose not to put a chemical in my body one day at a time. And it is only for the day. I have a lot of, I'm 69. I've had a lot of crashes and been shot and all that stuff. And when I have to go to hospital to get surgeries and they give me morphine, am I relapsing? No. In the old days, they used to try to tell you were. That's why the mushroom conversation is a conversation I believe is going to become very topical over the next 10 years. Because I have guys that I've been looking after for 20 years who are starting to say to me now, like, what do you think? And I say, it doesn't matter what I think. What do you think?
Good. I'm happy to hear that.
It doesn't matter what I think. It's what do you think? Am I inquisitive? Yeah. Am I afraid? My word, I am. Because I'm afraid of opening the door to hell. Because that's just for me. But if I was in a position where I thought would help me, I would do it. If anything to increase my recovery, to when I call recovery, I'm not talking about absence. Clean. What time did you get up this morning? If you're up earlier than me, you've been clean longer than me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just for the day. We got none of this. 37 years. Oh, wow, that's so cool. Man, on a bad day, I'm as bad as anybody else. My thinking's still fucking crazy. Yeah. So I rang my sponsor about 8 months ago. It's really funny. This spiritual advisor I've had for 37 years. We're mates. I've known him for 42 years. And I'd had a discussion with my wife. We don't fight, we have a discussion. I'm adamant I'm correct. I'm fucking 37 years clean. I've been around for 42 years. I work with people every day. I'm a genius. I ring my sponsor and say, man, I just had this conversation with V. My wife's name's V, Tequila. Blah, 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 blah. I said, this is what I did. And I'm telling him, he's real quiet. He's a real good guy. He's had me a long time. He knows me. He knows I'm not well. And he's there and he lets me finish. And he goes, are you fucking serious? I'm what? He goes, mate, you're so far out of left field, it's not funny. You get back there and you apologize, you're fucking wrong. What? I was devastated. I had to go in and say to her, honey, I'm sorry, you were right. I was wrong, But in my brain, I was 100% correct.
Yeah. And I get that for sure. I do. Like even today, like I'm working on this Sea-Doo that I have. And man, like if something goes wrong, like my mind can just go, oh man, I can bounce off the red line in 2 seconds if I let it, That's how, but I'm coming to a place now where I realize like, okay, like I gotta take a minute. Don't fly off the handle at the kids if they're too loud or asking questions or whatever. Just take a breath, and then in 10 or 15 minutes, like I'm coming back down to earth. But it took a long time. Like it took a long time for me to regulate like that, to be able to like be the observer instead of the experiencer.
Yeah.
Like if I'm observing these emotions, if I'm observing these actions, then I'm on the outside of them, right? And I can change them. I can change the way that I think.
Yep.
Before the actions come to fruition.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the thing with time up, and I say that sincerely and with a lot of humility, is we just get better at understanding how we don't function properly. We get better at understanding, like, well, that's an insane decision. Oh, that's a sane decision. Whoa, that was out of line. Oh, that's okay. We start to really be able to define what's sane, what's insane, what's right, what's wrong, what's loving, what's selfish.
And really, why the hell we're always in such a hurry.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big one for me. I'll have nothing to do all day and I'm hurrying to get it done.
You hurry up and wait, I call it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I'll get mad at other people if they're not going fast enough to go do nothing.
Yeah. Hurry up and wait. I rush to get there, then I sit there and wait for an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice speed and I'm fast, I'm not so bad now, but I used to, it's what you said, hurry up and wait. Just quickly. So you're into race cars?
I was.
Yeah.
At one time in my life I was. I had an 84 Mustang with a twin turbo 351 Windsor in it.
Okay, that would have been a fun car.
Yeah.
Did you race it?
I did.
What time?
It was my fastest was 11:26 at 126 miles an hour.
Good mile now. Yeah.
It's not bad. It was much faster than that, but I never got a roll cage into it, and I never hooked up the trans brake because it had a 4,000 stall converter in it and a trans brake. Yeah. And I got lost in my addiction before I was able to experience that. I probably would have twisted the axles right off of it anyways. But
I was going to say you would have. There was a lot more work to do. You would have had to tub it. You would have had to put some bigger tires under it. You would have had
It had 10-inch slicks on it. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done drag racing, and my best buddy done Top Fuel for years. And, he was racing at the top end, $250,000 for a bad weekend. You blow 3 or 4 motors up, a couple of superchargers, 250 grand. It's like, whew, it's a rich man sport. When you get to the top end there, but yeah, it's adrenaline. But it was really lovely hearing a lot of your story. It brought back a lot of stuff for me that, I was a drag racer, and I just smoked pot, man, and I drag raced every weekend, and then Hearn came, and then the car got sold. Yeah. The race car was trashed. I stopped working on my car because I was too stoned. I just didn't want it. I didn't care. And today, I have a ZR1 Corvette, the 2019 model, the 750 horsepower one. I have one of them in Australia. There's only two of them in the country, and it's my toy. That's my favorite car. And people say, like I get people wanting to buy it because there's only two in the country, and I go, it's not for sale. They go, and I love it. They go, everything's for sale, and I smile and I go, no, it's not no more. My dignity's not for sale. My recovery's not for sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, man. Look, I really, really appreciate you coming on, brother. I really do. It's been a real fun chat.
And thanks for having me. Thanks for giving me a platform to share my experiences. I appreciate that very much.
I just think it's important. That's why I've been reaching out to America, because we need to transnationalize all this stuff. I need people in Australia to go like, wow, that's the same over there.
Mm-hmm. We're definitely fucked up over here too. Yeah.
Check. I can vouch for it. I lived there for 20 years on and off. They're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mate, and you've got that fentanyl. That's just starting here now. So we haven't even got to that yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just beginning here now. It's, I watch what's going on over there, and, I speak to people over from the States all the time. And it's fucking sad, man. Yeah. But, we better wrap up, mate, because I'm sure you've got stuff to do, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Maybe we can talk about bringing you on the show sometime.
Love to, mate. Anytime you like, I'd love to.
Cool.
Anywhere we can share a platform of recovery, I'm there. Yeah. And awesome. I'm not, I just believe in recovery. I don't care how you get it. I don't care if you're standing on your hands with your underpants off and that keeps you clean. Fucking kudos to you.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. And I believe that. Yeah. There's no judgment in this world that I believe, apart from my own judgment of myself, which I've learned to be nice to me, Ron, because I need to be nice to me. Yeah. If I'm not nice to me, I'm not going to be nice to you, Yeah. So look, it's been a pleasure. It really has, I love what you're doing. You're doing good stuff, mate. And please let me come on. We'll have a chat, and we'll try to hook up and do a talk where we can bring other people into it too. Yeah, I don't know how to do all that stuff yet. I'm very new of all this computer. Yeah. I went to prison. There was no such thing as an iPhone. No, there wasn't. Yeah. I went to prison before the internet was just for porn. Yeah. That's what the internet was when I went to prison. I went to prison in 2002, came out in 2012. The world had changed. Yeah. Technology had changed. Yeah. So, look, thank you very much for coming on to The Truth About Addiction, Daniel. You're a good man. Anyone, go and check out Hard Knox Talks. I like it. And,
Find us on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook. We're on Instagram too. But if you want to watch our long form, our full episodes, hit us up on YouTube. YouTube has a podcast option now where you can just listen to it instead of watching. But if you want to listen on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. We're really easy to find. So thanks so much, Ron, for having me on.
Thank you very much, brother. You be safe.
Yeah. Take care for now.
Family. We'll talk again soon, brother.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.